Welcome back to another episode of the Buffalo Happy Hour. Mike, what's going on?
Derek, a lot, first and foremost, but yes, a lot. But new friends, new things to experience and try. Quick shout out to Addie's, obviously. Thank you again for allowing us to use your tasting room. This is very exciting for us because this is going to be a in-depth conversation on a spirit that we're not super familiar with. So in that, we worked with Addie's to work with you. So that way now we have someone who's got a wealth of knowledge, more so than us, to help educate us. So do you want to start with introductions and titles and things?
Sure. Titles. Well, I have one of those, I guess. My name is Cliff. I'm with a company called Winebow. I'm a CSW, Certified Specialist in Wine. But I have a heck of a passion for tequila, or all things agave, actually.
Why?
It actually started back in college. It was just the thing to have next to your beer. I worked in a great little jazz club in Long Island, and we had live music every night, and beer and tequila was just the thing to do. And over the years, just grew a passion for it, especially as you start to learn more and more about what goes into it. And I think what really solidified it was a trip to Oaxaca to see Mezcal production. That blew my mind.
When did you go?
That was in 2018.
Interesting.
So recent. What was your first tequila that you've tried, or Agave Spirit that you tried? Do you remember?
I remember very well. It was Cuervo 1800. That was our tequila of the moment for that year or so.
Is that good tequila? Is that considered good tequila or not really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Cuervo makes a lot of different tequilas. So it just varies in range. So you get what you pay for. When you're drinking 1800, you're paying for a better tequila, and you are getting what you expect.
Oh, okay.
What beer were you drinking back in the day with tequila when you were like at the jazz establishment? Do you remember?
Wow. I think I was on mostly a Mexican kick. We drank a lot of Dos Equis back then.
Nice.
Okay.
And he also had a lot of Negro Modelo. The owner was Mexican.
Gotcha.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
Because in our experience, most people are just either having it neat or as a cocktail. So to almost do like a Boilermaker of tequilas, fascinating. Because if I brought up to my family, they're like, "You're trying to forget whatever happened to you to do that." So
I mean, that's about right.
not wrong.
It's more of less of pounding and more of sipping. When we were drinking the 1800, we weren't doing shots, because in any day, anytime you do a shot, you don't actually taste anything because the alcohol's hitting the back of your throat. So it doesn't matter what you're pouring down your gullet if you're doing a shot. But if you're sitting around sipping something, you want something that's going to have flavor. And that sitting around sipping is really the key to enjoying tequila. It's not doing shots and then chasing it with lime and salt.
Right, that's true. So you went to, where'd you go again?
Oaxaca.
Oaxaca?
Oaxaca
is that
is-
can you explain the kind of the significance?
Oaxaca is one of the southern states of Mexico, and it's the home, kind of the general area where they make the most mezcal.
Okay.
So just a little touch on the tequila versus mezcal thing as we're starting to talk about it. So all tequilas are mezcal, but not all mezcals are tequila, right? So tequila needs to be made in specific states around Jalisco, and it needs to be made with one specific type of agave called Blue Weber agave. On the other hand, you've got mezcal that can be produced in several more states, and they can use any of the 40 varietals of agave that are in existence. Some of them are cultivated, and many of them are actually wild.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You go up into the mountains, and just conceptually, like Oaxaca, you're at almost 6,000 feet of elevation just in town. That's before you go into the mountains.
Sure.
But yeah, these wild agaves grow all through the hillsides throughout that part of Mexico.
When did the regulation come out that tequila had to be made in Jalisco and made with blue agave Weber? Was that recent?
That was fairly recent. I believe it was 1974 was when the actual law was put into place.
Interesting.
Well, it became a, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the term, intellectual property.
Okay.
So in I think it was 1974, the Mexican government said, hey, tequila has to be made in Mexico. It can't be made outside, just like the French did with champagne.
Sure.
So same concept. And that's when the Conciliador put in all of the laws.
Okay. So the history of tequila, kind of going back further than that, when did it start?
That is a great lead-in because the history of it starts all the way back with the Aztecs. The Aztecs, well, agave started with the Aztecs. They made something called pulque. Pulque is basically you crush up the agave, all the liquid is just let to ferment with natural yeast, and it becomes something closer to, think of it like a cider, a hard cider, right? It wasn't until the Spaniards came in the 1400s that they brought a distillation process with them and started distilling the pulque into what is closest to modern tequila now, although back then it would have been considered mezcal, because they were using all different varieties instead of just one specific.
So there's 40 different varieties of agave. So blue agave Weber is tequila. What other common varietals of agave are there?
So the most used ones that you come across would be Madrequiche, Orequeño, Tobala. Trying to think if there are any others that you'll see on a bottle these days.
Those are the most prominent ones?
Those are the most prominent ones, yeah.
Interesting. Do they just give off it would have to be just a different taste, right? I mean,
well, think of different agave varieties the same as you would think of different grapes and when you're making wine, right? Each of them has their own specific characteristics. Some of them take longer than others to ripen, which will be an important thing that we talk about along the way here is the ripening process.
Sure.
So what is this first one?
So I actually wanted to start with something that is very accessible to everybody. Pueblo Viejo was created by Casa San Matias. That's owned by Carmen Villarreal. So they've been in business since the 1800s, and part of their business model in 1989 was to come up with something that was not their very expensive, very small production tequila, but something that could go into bars and restaurants. This is currently the #2 selling Agave Spirit in Mexico City. It's used in a lot of bars and restaurants. So it's
what's
super
number
popular
one?
there.
Do you know what number one is?
You know what's funny? I asked the person who gave me that stat the same question, and they couldn't tell me.
So it's number 2. So it's mass produced. I mean, obviously, there's still some quality control behind it, but that's the one that is their kind of entry level, available everywhere.
Entry level, yes. Mass produce is a bit of a misnomer with this property, because when you think of something mass produced, think of it's distributed throughout the entire world, right? Mass produced, you could get it in China and Japan right now, and Europe. This is something that you can, at this point, still only get in the United States and of course, Mexico. They have some thoughts of branching out, but the production is just not going to work like that. One thing about Carmen is she is very particular about how she runs her business. They do everything from wastewater treatment on premises. She has basically taken at least an entire town in Jalisco out of poverty by giving them great jobs and health benefits and schooling. She's also done the same thing for a little town in outside of Oaxaca with a mezcal we're going to taste later. But
it's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
it's
mass produced is not quite what this is. It's still hand done. Instead of using again, some stuff we'll get into a little later, but instead of using a Tahona here, which is a big stone wheel that we'll talk about with the next bottling, here they're using a roller mill. So it's less labor intensive because the donkey doesn't have to walk around in a circle with it.
So they still do that to this day?
Oh, they certainly do. As a matter of fact, we'll move on to the next bottling, and we'll show you. I know this might be tough for the camera, but you guys will get a great look at this. Back here is that stone
They
wheel.
show it, yeah.
That's sweet.
So for those that can't necessarily see it, on the back side of the inside of the bottle, they imprinted the process to mash. It's agave, correct? Yep.
correct.
So what they used to do back in the day is they had a donkey walk in a circle and mash it. What they started to do, although some locations still use that method, they've machined it or revolutionized it, and basically now it's just a machine that does that same process. But they have to do it at like under certain clarifications or specifics, from what I understand so far. Is that correct?
You are right on track. Absolutely, Mike. So as you can imagine, the more work something takes, the more expensive it becomes.
That first one's really good though.
The first one's great.
Yeah.
As I said, it is an entry level. And honestly, I mean, those entry level tequilas, they're not specifically made for sipping. Those are specifically made to make cocktails.
Yeah. Right.
So if you're looking for a good silver tequila at a great price and you want to make cocktails, that's your guy right there. One of the things that is really important about this distillery is they are 100% additive free, and they do not use a diffuser. We can let's talk a little bit about that right now. Actually,
yeah,
because
please explain the
becomes
diffuser
important.
part. Yeah,
right. All right. So, agave to become ripe, Espadín, we're talking Blue Weber agave. We are talking about a minimum of 7 years for that plant to ripen. Most producers will go longer. In this particular bottling, they go up to 12 years for that process. And most of it is due to what part of the mountain you're planted on. So these guys are in Los Altos de Jalisco, so they're high altitude, cool climate, just takes longer for it to ripen. But much, again, I always like to reference back to wine because the growing processes, the finished product becomes similar depending on how things are growing, where they're growing, the temperature. So these are ripened fully before they're cut back. They take the leaves off of it, they split it, and they will roast it in a brick oven. Basically a big room, fire and steam, and it takes about 3 days usually, up to 3 days. A diffuser is a process where they use underripe agave, leaves and all, and they put it through what's basically a water cannon shredder, and it just obliterates the agave piñas, and then they are allowed to add up to 1% of additives in Mexico and tequila. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're using underripe agave, and then they're rectifying it with one of those additives.
So it's their way to get around the 7-year process that it takes to ripen something.
Correct.
I gotcha.
And it's having a big effect on the economy, on agriculture, because these plants have a natural life cycle and it's being taken away. And what they're doing is they're trying to replace these plants as quickly as possible, dig them up as quickly as possible. And it's causing shortages in agave for producers who are trying to do it right. It's mostly happening with some of the bigger conglomerate companies who own these tequila distilleries, because 80% of tequila distilleries are owned by people outside of Mexico.
Sure.
And it's a process that leaves you wondering what you're actually drinking.
Sure.
I think that's part of the attraction to this spirit, and then is even something like whiskey, where you're forced to enjoy the process. And most head distillers, maybe try 2 of their own batches in their lifetime just because they age it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating with this where they're trying to rush it and then literally Earth is like, no, dude, it's going to take 7 years. Like Mother Earth steps in. It's like, slow down, little one. Like, it'll be okay. Just produce the juice. I love that.
Yeah. And, you know, it's actually gotten to a point where there are a lot of tequila aficionados who are standing up and saying, yo, man, this is not right.
Yeah.
And we're going to tell you guys who's doing it and who's not. There have been a couple of big articles recently. One in Elle magazine not too long ago. There was one in Forbes recently where they talk about the different processes that are happening with diffusers. And, of course, Tequila Matchmaker. If you guys haven't seen the app Tequila Matchmaker yet, get it, because it's all about telling you exactly what's happening with the producers that you're buying.
That's cool. So,
And that's all, not to cut you off, Derek, that's all tracked with the NOM, correct?
That is.
Okay.
so in the world of whiskey, just because that's what we're familiar with, if you add anything to whiskey, you can no longer call it whiskey. You have to call it flavored whiskey. Do you see that potentially growing with tequila to say if it is diffused, you have to call it out on the label? Do you think that would ever happen?
I would love to say that it'll happen, but this is one of those things where the people who have all the money are the people who are making those decisions.
Sure.
So no.
So
probably not.
probably not, but
Historically, anyways.
historically. So, guys, I brought some snacks because one of the things that people, like I said, everybody likes to do shots of tequila. I want people to drink tequila. I want people to taste tequila. And part of it is each of the tequilas that are made in Mexico are made to go with certain flavors, right? Just like, again, wine. I know I keep going there, but wine and tequila have so much in common. So I brought a couple of different flavors that we could jump into to taste along.
This is so
I'm
exciting.
still trying not to make a mess right now.
No, you're good.
Yeah, take your time. No rush.
This tastes. This one is much. I like this one much more than the previous one. Do you?
Honestly, they're both super pleasant. I feel like you like this one just because of that smoke element.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a little smokier than the
That
first.
much of smoke, though.
No,
I
no,
think,
no. But
yeah.
compared to the first, I mean, the first was gentle. It was soft.
Yeah.
This has got like a little bit more of a bite to it, a little smokier.
I think that
They're
this
both-
just like cuts off real quick, and it's like that initial kind of tingle on your tongue, then it stops, and then you just get the sweetness from the agave after that. And I kind of like that break.
I like both of these. I
So-
get excited.
So like I said, for a purpose, right? And different production methods. It takes a lot of work to make something that's so handmade with literally a donkey going around in a circle, right?
Wild.
That's wild.
So the amount of liquid that you get out of each process changes as well. And that concentration can mean different things. So in the first one we tasted, the Pueblo Viejo, it takes it takes 9 kilos of agave to make the Pueblo Viejo. It takes 17 kilos of agave to make the Tahona. So it takes almost twice as much of the plant of the agave to actually make what's in this bottle. And it's because of that crushing. The roller mill, the automated, is way more efficient. So you get twice as much juice.
Is it just like an automatic like feed that goes through, and there's just a rolling pin always?
Pretty much.
Okay, that would make a lot of sense then.
Yeah, and it just, it just kind of, it almost pops like a kernel of popcorn as it goes under there.
And that's 17 plants per bottle.
17 kilos of plant per bottle. Now, a blue agave Espadín
they're
is about,
gigundous, right?
It's like this big. So you're probably looking at 3 or 4 bottles per piña.
This might be a really dumb question, but what is agave actually classified as? Like, it's not a vegetable. It's not a fruit. It's like sugar. Like,
It's a plant, right?
is it just like a plant?
I might actually go back. I think it might be considered a vegetable.
Really? Because I know like you can get agave like
You might have to Google
Yeah,
that one.
like honey.
Nobody asked me that before.
honey and agave are kind of they have the same flavor profile. So I don't know if that came from like, I have no idea. I kind of feel stupid not knowing.
Nah.
Nah.
There's no reason to feel stupid. There is so much information out there, guys.
Absolutely. That's what the Google machine is good for.
That's one of the things the Google machine is good for. All right, so talking about these flavors, with the Blanco, want to try the salsa,
Okay.
and then try it a second time with just a little squeeze of lemon on the chip before you do it.
So it's actually a succulent.
It's a succulent.
Yeah.
Okay.
No
that
idea.
That actually makes perfect sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Here you go.
What are we doing here?
So
We're eating, bro.
Love it.
try with a little bit of salsa as is,
I need some juice. I got thirsty.
and then give yourself a little bit of squeeze of lime on one first.
Oh, okay.
And then scoop it. So Blancos are all about the citrus. It's bright, fresh flavors, clean roasted agave. And this is when you want it. You want it as your first course. This is your appetizer tequila.
So try one with the salsa first.
Try one with just the plain salsa and enjoy that freshness. The cilantro will really play nice against that mintiness of the Tahona.
Also, guys, this is for the viewers. This is 80 proof. So we're doing okay.
We're doing okay so far.
So
It
good.
is gonna
I
go
love.
up.
What is the higher proof ranges for tequila? Is that a thing?
I mean, just in general, you will see things up to 92, 94.
Okay.
That happens especially in mezcals,
Yeah, this makes me happy.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, the like I said, fresh and bright, good flavors.
I
It's
love
a
lime so
pick-me-up,
much.
man.
Lime is such an incredible flavor.
I had a lot of margaritas with chips and salsa on vacation, and this puts me right back there. And now I'm sad that I have to go to work tomorrow.
Where were you on vacation?
Maine, believe it or not.
Chips and salsa in Maine.
Super
Why
close
not?
to Mexico, so basically the same thing.
So now this is the same distillery, but this is a Reposado.
Yes.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to mix.
So
Okay.
there are age definitions when it comes to tequila. And reposado means rested. So reposado tequila is just Blanco tequila taken and put into wood barrels, right?
For how long?
So when you're talking about reposado, it's for a minimum of 2 months, but no longer than 1 year. At 1 year, you become an añejo. At 3 years, you become an extra añejo. So we're not going to taste an añejo today, but we are going to the extra añejo.
Love that.
And then an extra añejo.
Ooh. How long is that for?
That's a 10-year. I brought a
10-year.
10-year, yes.
So when they're aged in barrels, do they have to be oak? Do they have to be any type of wood?
They do not have to be oak, but it is the most used. Oftentimes people will use old bourbon barrels because, the rules of bourbon, you use the barrel once and you can't use it for bourbon anymore.
Right.
So they become very inexpensive compared to what a brand new barrel costs. So oftentimes they're using bourbon barrels. Every once in a while, you'll get somebody who ages in a Mexican pine barrel, but we don't often see those here in the States.
Mizunara oak barrels? That'd be cool.
And this is the same.
That would be fun, actually.
Yeah.
This is the same location.
This is the same distillery,
Yep.
same family, all the way across the board. As a matter of fact, the first
I like their bottles a lot.
Yeah, their bottles are sweet. I like this little rope around the neck.
Me too.
the first
relax,
4 things
dude.
we're tasting.
We get it. You just got married. Calm down.
Well, now I know what to get you for a wedding
There
gift.
you go. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Just the rope.
Just
Yeah,
the
just
rope.
Yeah, not the juice.
Okay, so guys, getting into the reposado, there starts to get to be a creamy nature to this, right?
Yeah, why? What is going on with that?
So it's the oak. When you think about what oak imparts, vanillin is certainly a prominent flavor that you get out of American oak. Coconut, butterscotch, but all of those are flavor components that have texture to them, right? So you get the richness, those additions from the oak that become part of the tequila that give you that creaminess.
So instead of chips and salsa, are we still supposed to have chips and salsa with a reposado?
So with the reposado,
I can have chips and salsa whenever I want.
yeah,
them.
I mean, you
That's
really
fair.
can do whatever you want. Actually, with the reposado, jump into the guac.
Okay.
Guac, okay.
Yeah.
So far, in my tasting experience, which is unbelievably limited, but it's in only part due to Addie's. That's the only reason I've tried tequilas. Because Tyler forced it down my throat. Shout out, Tyler. Thank you. Reposados are my favorite so far, but I'm still getting my feet wet.
I like the Anejos, bro. Wait till you try a good Anejo.
It's because it's smoky. That's what you.
No, it's just because it's old.
It's similar to
just
Scotch,
aged.
right?
No, that's mezcal.
Okay,
Anejo
got
just
it.
means that it's been in a barrel for longer, right?
Okay.
Yeah, but the longer anything is in a barrel, the closer they all come together.
True.
You know, you taste something that's 20 years old, whether it be Scotch, cognac, aged tequila, everything starts to kind of taste like wood at a certain
Right.
point.
Yeah.
So for somebody who's a whiskey drinker, you know, a more wooded tequila makes perfect sense.
This with the guac is amazing.
And
It's that creaminess. It pairs well.
just to go around the room quick.
Yeah.
Well, around the table. Guac or salsa?
Me? Oh, I'm a guac guy, man.
Guac.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay, this is my jam. I'm real happy right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Guac. We buy these little
There is bread
taster
if
things
you
all the
prefer.
time.
Do you?
Oh my god, yeah.
There's actually bread rounds if you prefer
Oh, okay.
to the chips for this.
No, I don't want to bloat, sir. I'll stick with chips. No, this is really cool. I've never done a tasting like this ever.
Yeah.
So this is unique. Thank you again.
All right.
So Reposado goes up to a year.
up to a year.
Up to a year, okay.
All right, I'm going to throw a little tiny bit of a curveball reposado in here from a producer called Arte Nam. So these guys, basically what they do is they find all of your favorite producers and they do one-off bottlings from them.
Oh, sweet.
So think of like old White Mackay or somebody like that, Douglas Liang. They're bottlers, right? They buy whiskey and they put it in a bottle under their own label. Same idea here. But the cool thing is when you're getting these, oftentimes that is from a producer who we can't get our hands on. So different noms are represented, like Fortaleza, in this case, Siempre Vales, G4. So these are all tequilas that we can't get on a regular basis, but these guys are buying directly from those producers and bottling it themselves.
Can we not get them because we can't import them or just because they're so limited quantity?
Because they are extremely limited quantities.
Gotcha.
Can you explain the nom
Yes.
aspect as well for beginners?
So NAM is actually
Thank you.
two things. You're welcome. NAM is the Norma Oficial Mexicana, and it is the governing body that certifies distilleries. And the NAM is also the number that's on each of the tequila bottles that tells you what distillery that tequila comes from.
So
So
if
yeah.
you're super nerdy about tequilas, you find the nom on the label, search the nom, and then you get the distillery's background info, all the data, etc. And then you use an app to track all the noms and then all the distilleries and then what you've had so far. So
Yes.
if you're into that sort of thing for the audience, download the app and then you can basically go on this nom hunt and experience all the different tequilas from Blanco up.
Yep. Yeah, and you'll find it on every bottle. Sometimes it's a little small in the corner.
Are they required to
Sometimes it's right in the middle of the label.
Are they required to put it on by law?
they are.
Okay.
So it's required by law.
Correct.
That's amazing. I mean, it's amazing, but it's also fascinating because it's one extra step that basically it holds their feet to the fire. It holds them accountable to a degree.
To a degree. Just because you know where it comes from doesn't necessarily mean you know everything that's going on there. And that's why Tequila Matchmaker has gone the next step forward, where they're actually certifying distilleries that are additive free and diffuser free.
Gotcha.
So there's a little tag, and it's not, don't call it law yet, because it's taking them a lot of time to do it, because when they first put out the information saying, hey, we're going to do this, hundreds of distilleries, there are 1,500 distilleries in Mexico that produce tequila. Hundreds of distilleries said, yes, please, come. We want you to come and see what we do. And part of it is they literally open their books to Tequila Matchmaker to prove that they're not doing anything clandestine, right?
Yeah.
That's a shout out to the Mexican people. There's so much integrity there.
Well, I want to know how Tequila Matchmaker even got started, because that's pretty impressive that all these distilleries are basically opening themselves up just to be kind of verified in an app. That's wild.
Well, think about it from a business perspective. Wouldn't you want to be known as viable and verified? Like, that's a strong, powerful word. Not for marketing, but also for your consumer base. To know that you're legit, that's massive.
More and more nowadays, people want to know where their stuff is coming from,
100%,
and what's happening to it.
Yeah.
Right? This concept of additive free, the additives that they use are so concentrated that you could take the tip of a toothpick and dip it into the liquid smoke that they are allowed to use. The tip of the toothpick into a barrel will change the entire color and flavor of that entire barrel. So these are super concentrated. And there's 4 different categories that they're allowed to use. One of them is just, caramel color. There's a sweetener. There's wood smell and
Smoke.
glycerin.
Okay.
Glycerin for mouthfeel.
Sure.
So when they allowed the idea of these additives into the laws, it was supposed to be so that, hey, if I have 2 different bottles and they look just a little bit off and we're trying to have them look the same from batch to batch, we might add a little bit of color. But now it's turned into producers using these diffusers, getting tasteless end product, and then their tequila ends up tasting like whatever the additives are. It's there's a lot out there.
This one, I feel like it's not as sweet as this one.
Yeah, it's drier.
It's very dry.
In a good way, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different producers. Like I said, this is the family Vivanco, who makes Siembra Valles. Siembra Azul. And this is just a different style from high altitude, red, iron oxide laden soils, and very low temperature distillation.
Should we pair this with anything food-wise?
So I actually like this with the cheese, because it's a little creamier than the Tahona.
Are all of these sold at Addie's?
Everything we're tasting today is sold at Addie's.
Love that.
Nice little segue for the boys over
So
here.
download their app.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Addie's.
download the Addie's app, and then you can basically just search and then see what their inventory is set for. Do you know, not to put you on the spot, but do you know pricing for these that are here or not?
I probably should have found that out, but I did not.
Even ballpark it. Do you have any ideas if it's ballparked? Like, I'm sure that's not $2,000.
Oh, goodness, no. As a matter of fact, these are often less expensive than
whiskey.
A lot of other tequilas that you're buying, and definitely whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah, the Tahonas, you're looking in the 50, 60 range.
Okay.
The Arte Nam, you're probably under 50.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like this one.
Yeah, I mean, we're out of everything that we're tasting today, the quality is high, but the value is there.
I love that. We spent the first 2.5 years finding budget whiskey options for under $50. Like, best things you can do that's not going to break the wallet. And it's unbelievable how many options there are. So it's really cool that you can do that as well with tequila. Yeah. Just it's not intimidating, but it's intimidating because it's a totally different spirit. There's so many ins and outs of it. You don't really know how
everybody's had bad experiences with it, basically. So everyone's kind of hesitant to get back into it.
Well, yeah, people went to college and they're just like, well, yeah, I'm going to crush it. And then they forget they're weak. I mean, now that, now that we're adults and we're being strategic about this. It's actually super exciting and inviting.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like all of the distilleries have really, really deep-rooted good stories, and they're like sound people.
Yeah, very much so. And that's what our company does. Winebow, we specialized in family-owned and operated businesses across both our spirits and our wine portfolio.
Please explain Winebow. We haven't touched on it yet. We probably should.
Winebow is a wholesale and distributor, but we are a distributor of fine wine and spirits throughout the United States. We also have an import arm of our company, so we bring in wine and spirits from Italy, France, Germany, Spain, South America, as far as Australia, Japan. We are quite international.
How many people work there?
We have to be in the range of 2,000 by now.
Oh, wow.
Employees?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Well, as I said, we're in more than 20 states. Just here in New York State, we have we probably have 300 employees.
Oh, wow, I didn't know
least.
that. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Winebow's huge.
Yeah, I did not know
And-
that.
Yeah, we didn't know that. We should probably straighten up, man. Like, fix our posture.
You know, we're the biggest little guy. You know, we're still
Gotcha.
considered a small company compared to the big conglomerates who, I think we fit number 6 in the United States. And there are 3 who are just
Yeah, they're just gigantic.
gigantic.
So you guys work with these distilleries face to face. Like,
Face to face, absolutely.
so how often do you have to travel for work?
Not as much now.
Sure.
But we get to travel once or twice a year to either a wine or a spirit region. We will travel within the state, bringing the word around. So, I'm kind of a road warrior when it comes to the car in New York State, but don't have to get on a plane too much.
Gotcha. Okay.
But we do a lot of education over the internet nowadays. As a matter of fact, we just had the pleasure of hearing Carmen Villarreal. She was at our office in New York yesterday, and we did a great seminar with her.
Oh, that's sweet.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And again, this is a woman who had 6 kids, lost her husband in 1997, and still managed to run a company and turn it into something that is not only helping the Mexican people, but she's working with the Mexican government, the Board of Tourism, and she's even donating money in New York City for there's an immigrant child housing project that she works on in New York City.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah, she's
That's
an outstanding person. So I want to continue on with the Casa San Matias, and this is something that's pretty unique to their portfolio. It's an inexpensive Extra Añejo.
So typically when you start going from Blanco to Reposado to Anejo to Extra Anejo, does it normally go up in price, or is that not relative?
Yes, absolutely. Anytime you have to warehouse something, you have to charge for it. That's part of it. And then there's also, you guys will know from whiskey, angel share. Same thing happens, especially in Mexico. It is quite warm.
Sure.
Better at altitude, but still quite warm. So you lose angel share every year. It's not, I think it's about 4 or 5%. It's not like Goa, India, where they're losing 8, 9%.
Right.
But
Yeah, really.
Do they call it angel share?
they don't.
So
I don't know that I've ever heard them talk about it as a term.
Yeah, they just
Obviously,
expect it
there's
as a
something
loss.
there. Yeah, it's an expected loss.
Okay.
So you said before this is 10-year?
No, I there
Oh,
yet.
okay, gotcha.
We're that's the extra.
Oh,
Yeah, settle down, Derek.
Sorry, I just
Slow
got
your roll,
juiced.
D.
I love this.
Slow your roll, D. I love that.
So we are tasting the Gran Reserva Extra Añejo. So at 3 years, that's where that next category kicks in, Extra Añejo.
There we go.
You like this?
This is when you're getting into those, real woody flavors, and you're starting to expand on the roasted nature of the agave, but then all those wood flavors start to come into the fish, and it gets just spicy and rich.
What's the ballpark on this?
Oh, it is so cheap. This is like $50.
What?
All right, so let me explain this to you. Casa San Matias was the very first person to release an Extra Añejo onto the market.
Very first.
Very first. So this was back in 1993. You get the first bottled Extra Añejo shipped out into the marketplace. And this is a regular part of their production. This is not a special bottling. They've made this for 20 some odd years. They do it consistently. They do it by a recipe. They're only using Tahona crushed agave. They're using predominantly ex-bourbon barrels, but they're also using some virgin oak. And it doesn't have to be this miraculous thing that people charge you hundreds and hundreds of dollars for. You can get a great Extra Añejo sippable agave for $50.
So they just started the concept of Extra Añejo in the 90s?
So understand, people always save
classification
some barrels.
of it, sure, yeah.
Correct, right. You know, every
It's
distiller
wild.
saves some barrels,
Sure.
puts a few babies in the back for later.
That's
But
just so wild how new this
it's a
classification
really young
is.
category.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is so good.
Now's the cheese time.
Now it's
Yeah.
just time,
Now
sure.
is the cheese time.
I don't know if I'm dumping any of this out, friend.
Hey,
I
you don't
already
have
drank
to.
mine. I already drank my little sample. This is unbelievable. And again, here at Addie's, another shout out. This is
This is the Hoot one. Hoot Hoot.
yeah, Hoot Hoot.
Love that.
Hoot Hoot came back. We did a review. Tyler gave us one of the bottles that was also that distillery.
LBO.
Oh,
yeah.
right on.
So we basically said Hoot Hoot during the whole time because of the owl. For those that
We're
are
very
watching,
immature, just so you know.
yeah. For those that are not watching on YouTube, for one, you need to watch on YouTube. But two, the logo is an owl. So enough said. Me and Derek.
This is an amazing cheese, too, by the way.
Yeah,
Can we
nice
talk
job
about
on
that
the
real
cheese
quick?
pick.
Cotillo,
What?
So
Mexican
good.
cheese.
Cotilla.
From where?
Just
Waggies.
Waggies
I
has
don't know
it?
if you can get this at
No free shout outs, but I didn't know you could get that there. That's amazing. Yeah, unless you're Addie's. That's amazing. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, man. I want to be thorough. I want to make sure you guys are getting the experience. If I could have got fried crickets and chicharron, I would have had it, but I couldn't find any.
We have a local restaurant that has fried crickets though.
Right on.
Yeah, they use crickets in a few of their dishes. Yeah, that threw me for a loop. We had them after the interview with them. Yeah, that was an experience. Anyways, it was like Fear Factor. So what's this? You got packaging.
So before we move on, when you go to Oaxaca and you go to a restaurant, instead of putting bread on the table, they put fried crickets.
That's awesome.
It was fantastic. And it was in every drink, and it was pretty much everywhere. Okay. So we are taking a bit of a step up. We're getting into a specialty bottling called Imperio del Don. And this is from the Arendian family. This one's a one-off from everything else that we're tasting today because Tyler's actually had some great success with this here. He buys it by the bottle or two, and people have really taken to it because most of the Extra Añejos that are on the market are 5 or 6 years old. We have this young guy here, but it's priced like a young guy here, right? And then you're talking about, in some cases, high hundreds to several $1,000s a bottle. Oftentimes it's because it's in a beautiful decanter, right? They didn't need to put this into a super beautiful decanter that was hand blown and cost $1,000 to give you good, well-aged tequila. So this is a 10-year-old. It's taken from a special plot that the Arendian family owns in Los Altos de Jalisco. It is Tahona crushed, and it sees a full 10 years minimum in barrel.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, boys. Oh my God! Put your nose in that glass.
Yeah, right.
It's honey and vanilla, caramel,
This is good.
just beautiful cooked agave.
Derek's a tequila guy now.
And
What do
there's
you
like
watch
a
out?
saltiness to it that's kind of fun.
So, ballpark price on this? Any ideas?
This one is probably in the 3.25 range.
That's
somewhere
fascinating.
thereabouts.
Thank you for this.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's a treat. This is super exciting.
This is
This
fun
is
to share.
super good. And this, you're not making a cocktail with this.
You're not making
Obviously.
a cocktail. You want to put this into a snifter or a nice bold wine glass.
Yeah. And you want to enjoy this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting all those rich bourbon notes.
Now,
this is so good with
here's
that
the
like
thing.
extra honey, like kick to it. This is fantastic.
There's no ice. You don't put ice in this. You don't need to. It's so different from whiskey. You really don't need to.
Yeah, I never put ice in any of my tequila unless I'm making a cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not like a whiskey where oftentimes people like us drink cast strength stuff, and a little ice will do it some good. This, they're always in that 80 to 90 proof, and unless they're playing around with it, the flavors are always going to be soft and clean.
You know what I really like about tequila?
It's 84 proof.
I know. You know what I really like about tequila is that when you age it longer, it gets creamier. Yeah. And you don't get that luxury with bourbon. Normally when you get it, or with whiskey, when you age something longer, some of those like delicious notes fade away because the barrel's just taken over. Here I feel like, at least for me, that agave like creaminess is really shining through as soon as you continue getting up in age. This is really good.
Just for a matter of like weight perspective, think of, do they make agave syrup, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that comes out as a
Very viscous,
thick.
yeah.
You're not doing that with barley.
Mm-hmm.
So the textural
very
difference
true.
between the main ingredient, it shows up all the way through the process.
This is so good. That's why you kind of get like that Flemingness that I was talking to you about when we were reviewing them. It's kind of coagulating because it's so creamy and like thick and dense. This is really good.
What is this?
So it's time that we get to mezcal.
My favorite. I don't know. This can be tough to top.
So this is one of those things where I'd love to just leave this for the end, but it doesn't make sense to go to mezcal and get all those smoky flavors in and then go back to it. So it's definitely a contemplator.
So in the age statement, is extra anejo, or it's not necessarily a category, but is 10 years, is that common? Like
Not at all.
No? Okay.
Most of the time when you see an extra añejos, they go upwards of 6-7 years.
Okay. So going to 10 is really a treat. Like, okay.
Absolutely. And and if you go look at it out on the shelf, you'll see nothing else that has that 10-year age statement on it.
This is really good.
I have so many ideas for holidays now.
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable.
And part of it, make sure you teach them. Give it to them
100%.
and then say, hey, watch
chips.
this podcast.
I feel like you need more chips, friend.
Dude, I'm everywhere. I'm just fine. I'm so happy right now.
I know,
We have
right?
snacks. We're learning all the tequila things.
All
Thank
the
you again for
tequila
this.
things.
This is great.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so let's talk espadín and let's talk mezcal.
All right.
All right, so you think of tequila as the shined up city cousin. Mezcal is definitely the country cousin, right? They are hands in the earth. They're going up the sides of mountains, finding wild agave plants. They're using things that take 20 years to mature, which we'll talk about with this Tobola in a little while. The process is dumbfounding, and the natural resources there are very limited. So when you start talking about what's happening here, it's incredible what they've done with so little. Now, there are no oven roasted fire rooms. Here, they're digging a pit as if you were doing like an underground barbecue. You're putting your agave under there on hot rocks after a big fire, and then you bury it for a few days. And that's how they roast their agave. Then they have to dig it back up. They crush it often with a Tahona, but sometimes with just this big, like Barney Flintstone bat looking thing that they just crush it into a hole. It's almost Stone Age when you see it. The stills are made out of clay and bamboo piping, and then they got their hands on, one spool of coil, of copper coil. The water source is generally a pipe coming out of the side of the mountain that's just dipped right into the mountain's fresh water. I mean, it's incredible what they do.
This distillery or mezcal in general?
Just mezcal in general.
That's unbelievable.
So they actually, I didn't know that the smoke was similar to the process in Scotland. Like for Scotch, they burn the ground, basically. Here, they don't burn the ground. They burn everything and then put the ground on top of it.
Exactly.
That's sweet. No wonder why I like this so much.
Scorch and burn, baby.
And there is not a lot to burn down there, by the way. So that's another natural resource that's in limited quantities. Hardwood to burn is difficult.
Right.
Even when you go out into these mountainsides outside of Oaxaca, there aren't huge trees like you would see here in the Northeast.
Smoky. So when you get
Smoky
tequilas, you have Reposado, Blancos. Is that the same? That's not the same with mezcal, is it?
So you are allowed to do that, yes. However, not a lot of producers do it. One does, and we will taste it.
Let's go. So normally it's mezcal. If it's mezcal, it's mezcal.
If it's mezcal, it's mezcal. Usually the differentiation there is either the variety of agave they use or where it grows.
Okay.
And they are very regionally specific. A lot of agave producers are brought together by a bigger company. So they'll say, oh, we'll buy all of yours, but we'll put your name or your town on it. And they get very town specific oftentimes because every town has their own little style. Just like, you go town to town and there's a little different dialect.
Sure.
Same thing with the mezcals. Town to town, they do something just a little bit different. So each of them is speaking specifically to the place that they come from, which is super cool.
What is the term Hoven?
Joven means young.
Young, okay.
Basically, in mezcal, a joven would translate to a blanco.
Okay, I got you.
Tequila.
Sure.
I'm so happy.
This is so fun.
Yeah. I'm learning so much right now.
I just like talking with people that are also just as nerdy as you are about spirits. It makes me really happy.
So jacked when it comes to, especially about agave right now, man. This has been a lot of fun for me, dipping in and finding the little nuances. It's like solving a Rubik's Cube, man. When you get something new in there, you're like, yeah, I didn't know that before. That's so great.
Are there not like shortages, but are we seeing specific brands struggle with certain things?
Yes. But oftentimes they have outlets to work with, right?
Okay.
So there's a category that we didn't talk about. And when you were saying before, everybody had that college experience where they got sick on tequila. Well, most of us got sick on what's called a misto tequila, right? So when we're looking at these guys, it'll say on here, 100% pure blue agave, right? That means that there's nothing in here but the juice from that agave. On a misto tequila, only 51% of what's in that bottle needs to be agave. The other, up to 49%, could be any spirit.
Oh, no.
Oh, really?
Any base spirit.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Which means they're generally taking the most sugary thing that they could get their hands on, and they're using that.
Whoa.
So
that's why we forgot what day it was.
That makes so much sense now.
And on top of it, they have caramel color in them because they're not aging.
Yeah, they don't
that
care.
Stuff. That stuff is caramel color, which, by the way, is just more sugar. So everybody who had that hangover from that gold label tequila, whose name we won't mention, that's why, because there was more sugar in it than there was actual agave.
So what did you call that again? What type of tequila is
Misto.
that?
Mixto. Mixto.
Oh, okay. That makes so much sense now.
I feel like they exist specifically because of college freshmen.
Actually, they exist because it was a way to stretch out the agave that you have available to you.
I have a weird sidebar question too
Yes.
that goes back to the original process of the donkey in a circle. How long does a donkey go in a circle? Is there like a timeline where it's just like, we need you to do this for 10 hours?
Usually it's only about 45 minutes at a pop.
Okay.
And then the donkey goes and, takes a break, smokes a cigarette, whatever.
Smokes a cigarette.
Yeah.
But
Rips a stick.
but it's kind of a work in progress because they'll throw a couple of piñas in there and the donkey will crush them, and then they'll throw a couple more on top, and they're
Sure.
pitching stuff back into the center and moving it around. So for one big pit of agave to be roasted and then you take it to get crushed, that crushing period could last a couple of days. And guess what? These people will stay there. Now, I forgot to mention when I talked about all those crazy things in Mezcal, there's also almost nothing that resembles a distillery. Most of the time, it's like a lean-to tin roof, with 4 posts, clay and earthen stoves, and like there'll be a bed in the corner and there'll be like a comfy chair over there because these guys will just stay there all night working until the process is done. Because it's all time sensitive. The longer you let this stuff sit, it starts to lose characteristics.
Now, are there laws in Mexico for treatment of donkeys? I just have to ask. Because I'm sure somebody's at home on the couch just like, what about the donkey?
How do I answer this diplomatically? There are barely laws protecting children. Forget
Sure.
about the donkeys.
Sure. Okay.
So
no.
I'm not saying that that's just Mexico. That's just pretty much everywhere where labor is inexpensive. And again, like for the 15th time, I'll go back to Carmen Villarreal because when she bought Los Vecinos, they were using child labor, and she ended that and sent all the kids to school.
Wow.
So yeah, I have a feeling that the donkey does not really get the
smoke break.
the back that he deserves.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So hoot hoot.
Hoot hoot.
There's the El Bujo, the owls, and I wanted to bring this one because it's our first opportunity to get outside of Blue Weber Agave Espadín. This is called an especial. An especial is kind of like an ensemble where they're putting more than one agave variety together. So in here, you've got Espadín and Tobala. Okay? So we talked about Espadín before, this big. Tobala, this big. Except they take upwards of 20 years to mature.
Wow.
And then it takes even longer to roast than the typical Espadín. So they will roast these sometimes for 2 weeks underground. They'll leave them completely underground for 2 weeks. When they dig them up, they even have like a little mold growing on the outside, and it's all part of the joy of the flavor in the end. Kind of like the way Noble Rot works in Sauterne, right? It's a mold that absorbs water out of the grapes, which concentrates the sugars. So kind of the same thing is happening here, but at the same time, it also becomes part of the finished product.
Now, you just said a lot there.
I know. I'm sorry.
For those
Too
that
much
don't know,
coffee.
no, it's okay. For those that don't know, Sauterne is a French white dessert wine.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Got you.
Sorry.
So when you're talking about agave spirits, are there distilleries that do both, that do tequila and mezcal, or do they normally stick to one
So there are companies who own multiple, as is the case with Casa San Matias owning here and also in Mezcal. However, you cannot produce them in the same place. So you could never like bring agave from tequila to one place and mezcal to one place and have your distillery there and make those products. They have to be 100% made in their regions.
Okay.
So not often do you see that crossover.
And is there ever any, like you say, it takes 7 years for an agave plant, a blue agave, about to ripen?
Correct.
Is there any difference between picking it at 7 or taking it at 7 years versus taking it at 10? Like, is there a ripening process that could change the flavor at all?
Absolutely. And, I didn't actually talk about this, but the agave tells you when it's ready because it throws a flower called a quiote. So, Don Quixote, it's a lance, right? So the quiote, the flower that comes out of the top of the plant, is quite tall and with one big flower at the top, right? So when a plant is matured, they will cut that quiote off. So instead of sending the energy to the flower, it actually concentrates it back down into the plant. And you wait a period of time and then you will harvest it.
Gotcha.
So oftentimes, the plant is telling you when it's really ready.
This one, I get like, this is going to sound unpleasant, but I promise you it's very delicious. But like a cigarette or cigar taste to it, like a very deep char.
Char to this.
It tastes like cigarettes, Lieutenant Dan.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
That was good.
So this is El Bujo.
El Bujo.
El Bujo.
I think half of this is learning how to say it correctly, so we're not offending anybody.
That high school French is really working for you right now, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, well, luckily I took Spanish.
Oh, you took Spanish. That was you who took French.
He took French. There's some aspects where I can pick up, but it's, mi español
Stop it,
es
you're
así,
the
así.
worst. Oh my God.
It's not that good.
Yo también hablo como un niño.
I understood some of that. We're doing good. So this is which one?
So for our last of the evening, I decided, and I mean, you couldn't have asked a better question about whether or not they have those different aging categories in mezcal. Well, here's one for you. This is from Ubal, and this is an añejo. Añejo.
Okay.
So añejo is a fully aged 1 year minimum, up to 3 years before you change that category. And what's really cool about this producer and several of the ones that we have, there is a ton of information right on the front label. It tells you everything from where it comes from, who made it, what they cut it with, machete, and the producer, how long it was roasted. I mean, there's so much wonderful information on here. And it's just cool. It's just cool because the provenance of what you just bought here.
Ballpark pricing on this? Do you know?
This one is just under 70, I believe.
So when you look at a mezcal, not mezcal, mezcal. When you look at a mezcal, and they have an añejo on there, is that more for marketing than at that point? Because they're not required to put it. Are they required to put it on here on tequila? They are, right?
Well, required. They want to. They're creating different styles, and this is exactly what they're looking for. They want you to be able to try this young one, this one that sees a little bit of wood, this one that sees a lot of wood. So they're creating specific categories. And again, sometimes it's to go with food, sometimes it's to go with other things. But conceptually, you make what you want in your own region. So that's what that was about. Here, it's still a bit of a novelty to have these aging statements on mezcal. You're not going to see a lot of them in the marketplace. I wouldn't say that it's marketing. I think, again, it's, hey, this is the style that we like to drink.
Sure.
This was created by somebody who wanted to have an aged, slightly smoky agave spirit. And they were probably having, I don't know, a steak or something. I really wanted something to go with steak.
Yeah, so that's a good point because we've been pairing a lot of the tequilas with what's on our plate. What do you normally pair a mezcal with?
I forgot.
Oh,
Chocolate. We
What?
need dessert.
let's go, buddy.
I love
Save
chocolate.
that real quick. I'm gonna finish this cheese right quick. Don't worry.
So one of the cool things about the smokiness that you get out of mezcals is, man, they go so good with a little dark chocolate. Dig in. But
Let's go, baby.
what's even more fun is when you start to see what happens when you taste them with a little spice and a little sweet. So after you try it with that one, come back and try it with. So we got a 70% dark chocolate for the first one. Second one is just about the same thing, except it's got chiles in it.
Ooh. Tyler gave us a the ghost tequila. That was ghost pepper.
Yeah.
Mike hates spice. So we're gonna make him have this though, because that's what we do here. But his face when we tried it was just like, no, not doing it.
This is not over the top spicy, but it's fun to get that little tingle on your tongue and then let the agave touch it. Just kind of feel how it spreads.
All right, here we go.
Wow, that makes me happy.
Wow, that regular chocolate, it's very good with this.
It is. It calms it down, and it exemplifies the tasting notes in it.
So there you go. There's your dessert tequila right there, or your dessert mezcal.
Is that how people normally drink it though? Like, how does the Mexican culture embrace both of these? Are they separate like timings? Is that a dessert drink, or are they just whenever? Like how we drink whiskey here?
So honestly, we're a little over nerding right now, where I basically could have created a menu for tonight, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
When when you're producing your own spirit, oftentimes you have your favorite child, and that's what you just drink all the time. I got to spend time with one mezcalero, and he made an especial that was 100% espadín, and he carried it around in a plastic baseball squeeze bottle on a rope around his shoulder.
That's awesome.
And I don't even know how this stuff didn't just eat right through the plastic.
Right? Yeah,
because it was easily 110 proof. And he just carried it around and, hey, you want some? And he'd pull the little squeezy top out and he'd spray it in your mouth for you. No glass, no nothing.
Sounds like me when I'm 50.
Awesome.
Yeah, just like over it. You know, like I'm living my life now. Like
Yeah,
I'm
right.
sick of trying to fit into society. Like I'm walking around 110 proof. I'm good.
Just spray it out, baby.
So when you're talking to somebody that's never tried tequila before, or an agave spirit before, I always say tequila because that's just the first thing that comes to my mind,
Yeah,
but
of
it's
course.
not. So when you're talking to somebody that's never tried an agave spirit before, where do you normally direct them to? Do you ask them what they prefer to drink, or do you like what is your process?
Yeah. Do you just give them a Blanco and say enjoy?
So I always ask people what they usually drink whenever I recommend something, because I want to make sure that I'm going in the right direction. You know, you've got your white spirit drinkers, vodka, gin, are not always the person that you want to recommend a Blanco to, but your whiskey drinkers, 90% of the time, you do want to recommend something that's got a little wood age on it. So yeah, you always ask first. But for me, the first step in agave is getting a really good tequila that is made in the traditional method, additive-free, non-diffuser. That's your baseline. Like, if you want to teach somebody the right way to start drinking,
Exactly, the right way, right.
don't give them the junk first, because what happens is people have averse reactions to it.
Right.
As soon as you say tequila, everybody's, oh, college, right? I don't want to do that to people. I want them to drink this first so they go, oh, okay. I don't have to throw up out my car window.
Yeah. Do you shy away from recommending mezcals right off the bat just because of the smokiness?
Not necessarily. And you're probably a great example. I know you said you like some peaty scotches.
Yeah.
I would immediately go to mezcal for you,
Okay.
100%. that little hint of smoke is something familiar that you enjoy.
Sure.
So trying to point you in the direction of exactly what you would take home and enjoy.
Now, what about bourbon rye guys? Reposados?
So bourbon guys, Añejo or better. Rye guys, Reposado.
Okay. Makes sense why I like Reposado.
You're a rye guy?
Yeah. But I mean, sometimes I'm seasonal. So if it, but that's why I love the fact that we have 4 seasons. Because you can try it out where you're just like, oh, it's fall, might rain today, might be like 60, might be 55. I'm feeling this.
Sounds like a cognac kind of day to me, right?
Sure. There you go. And then like summer, you might go to something else, or it's a cocktail. So you might go with a Blanco and then just throw in and make a super nice cocktail. Who knows? Like for me, that's what's exciting about tequila in general, because you can explore the entire spirit and then you can pick different distilleries based on not only mood, but temperature, vibe. And you're just like, this is fun. Because now I can kind of pair things with like where I'm at.
Yeah. And we're at the point where social media has created just this great place to go and interact with these producers. Some of them have very active social media presence, and then some of them live in a place where they don't know what social media is. So you just never know what you're going to get.
Does Winebow have social media?
We do. Winebow does have social media, and it's Winebow Incorporated.
Okay.
We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I think Reddit too.
Interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do like a clip later, like on our time, where we compare an old fashioned with bourbon versus an old fashioned with some sort of extra anejo, because right now, maybe it's the tequila talking, but right now I feel like an old fashioned with tequila would be better, because then you're not adding the additional sugar in there. You're relying on the sugar or the sweetness from the agave with also the wood characteristics from it being an extra anejo, instead of using just a bourbon and then adding sugar and adding like a cherry. Like I feel like an old fashioned with a tequila would probably be better.
And as opposed to the sugar, you could use agave nectar.
Sure, yeah.
One of the health benefits that we didn't talk about is agave has a very high glycemic index, meaning that it's not as detrimental to human insulin production. So less dangerous sugar. We'll call it that.
This is awesome. Do you have any local sites, or like where can people in Buffalo find where your products are located? Is it just on your site where you have kind of like a zip code lookup or anything like that?
Yeah, like a directory.
Yeah.
We do have a zip code lookup on our homepage where you can chase things down, and more of your Instacart and those guys make it pretty easy to find stuff. I think Flaviar is one that works up here pretty well, but there's it could be hit and miss sometimes. Sure. We do business with all of the major retailers around Buffalo, and we've got some great small friends who do fun niche stuff with us. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, you can generally track us down, and if you can't, you can always find me through you guys, Cliff Palmore. Easy to come across.
I love that. So go support Winebow, go support Cliff, and go support Addie's. Come on out here to Williamsville, pick up some Agave Spirit, and really figure out what type of Agave Spirit you're interested in, because they do vary quite a bit. I mean,
it's astounding.
Just from what we've had today, I mean, I have my favorites for sure, and I'm sure you have your favorites, and I can guarantee you they're probably different.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, we're going to wrestle about it, but it's fine.
Yeah. So go check them out. Come to Addie's, pick up a bottle. And Cliff, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. I appreciate it.
This was so much fun. And by the way, you guys tasted 9 Agave Spirits today. You are champs.
Let's go. Let's go.
We're here for it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.